I've been climbing for almost 10 years. If I could go back and watch this video, I would save myself years of banging my head against the wall, not understanding why I didn't improve no matter how hard I tried. This is not going to be a video about tips and tricks. These are the top 10 reasons for every single major plateau in my climbing career. By watching this, I hope you'll be able to avoid many of the mistakes I've made, fix plateaus before they even happen. I know this works because over the past 2 years, I've used these concepts to change my climbing completely. And before you think I might be a special case, I've taught these concepts to dozens of other climbers with similar results. So these are my top 10 regrets in climbing. Let's start with a controversial one. I hate climbing drills. Now, it's not really the problem of the drills, but the climbers who do them. Just like me, many climbers do silent feet or move like a robot every single session and not really seeing improvement. I would set a timer and do 3 different drills 10 minutes at a time. So for years, I spent 30 minutes doing drills. And even though I might have gotten a little bit stronger, my technique was still horrible. To be honest, it wasn't even the drill's problem, it was my problem. I didn't understand what the purpose of the drills was. Problem is, I see a ton of climbers doing silent feet on juggy ladders with horrible posture, over gripping every single hold and moving slower than my grandma. This completely defeats the purpose of the drill. Silent feet is not necessarily about being silent. It's about precision and thoughtfulness. Placing a foot exactly where you want it, exactly how you want it, with a lot of pressure and trusting it. Hovering over a handhold for 3 seconds isn't about training endurance. It's about finding the optimal spot on each single move. The purpose of training is to make your body stronger, but drills are for skills. The problem is that by only doing this on easy climbs, most climbers just destroy every single hold, over gripping it and focusing on being dead silent. But also, when they suddenly get into intermediate climbs or hard ones, they can't flip the switch. The important thing is, if you're going to do a drill, you have to be able to de-stress it. You have to be able to do it on every single level of difficulty. Otherwise, the silent feet only works on the V0s and not the V10s. Even though I finally understood this when I moved to Japan and swapped drills out for intense-fold climbing, there was still a huge gap in between what I was good at and everything else. If I would get on something remotely technical, I was completely stuck. I only managed to fix this thanks to watching a YouTube video on a completely unrelated thing. If there is only one thing I hope you take from this video, it's this next bit. So please give me 30 seconds before you click off. There's a game called RuneScape. It's a very old game. And in that game, you have 2 very important numbers. Your individual skill, which goes from 1 to 99, and your total level. That total level is the aggregate of every single level you have on every single skill. Now, what was my regret? Was it playing so much RuneScape? Maybe, I played too much. But my climbing regret was that I focused so much on my max skill instead of focusing on my total level. If you would break down climbing into every single wall angle, every single technique, hold type, everything, you would end up with like 50 or 60 different skills. And the problem is, most of us, we only focus on being good at 2 or 3 areas. But what we don't understand is that there's some skills that are complementary. So let's say if you get good at wood cutting, it's really easy to get good at fire making. Now, a climbing example would be, if you get good at rock-ons, you can get really good at slopers. Because the biggest problem about slopers is keeping your body under them, and usually setters want to throw you off, so they put high feet. Another combination might be getting good at heel hooks and toe hooks for anything on a roof. Or a more old school style, having strong fingers and good hip mobility for climbs on vert. So by focusing on a holistic view of climbing and not just 1 or 2 skills, we can exponentially make everything better. You can learn a couple of skills and see how they tie in between each other and improve so much faster. This is just, it completely changed how I view climbing in Even by working slab, I was improving overhand. I cannot stress how important this has been to every single thing I've done after I really understood it. And also, if you're always climbing in the same style, it's very easy to get injured, overworked, or anything else. But by swapping styles, angles, everything, and just learning the fundamental movements that are in each of those things, you can transfer the skills over so much faster. Because I finally understood this, even though it took me years to notice, I came to a hard truth. I was not climbing hard enough. Now, climbing hard enough is pretty subjective. And since I said my previous regret was focusing so much just on a single max level, that can mean that climbing hard is climbing what you're bad at too. By climbing different hard things on different days, you're always pushing your limit on each one of these skills. And by doing it in different areas instead of the same one every single time, you don't get overtrained and your skill acquisition just goes through the roof. The biggest mistake is avoiding the anti-style. Whatever you're bad at, that is a big indication that you have to improve. For me, it used to be heel hooks. I would place a heel hook and I would always slip or hurt my knee. Just to give you a few examples so you can think about it, think of problems with different box sizes, different hole types, wall angles, any technique in particular that you're bad at. Really, don't let 5 years pass and not be able to heel hook, because that's what happened to me, and who knows, I could be climbing V20 now. Something that I didn't do for the first 5 years of my climbing career was filming. Now, I have a YouTube channel and everything, and I have a ton of videos. If you watch my Instagram, you see a video every single day. But before I came here, I thought it was very ego driven, and it was just too much of a hassle. I wouldn't film myself. But now I know that is a huge mistake. There is a gap in between what you think is going on and reality. And the only way to fill that gap is by filming yourself. You could make the gap smaller if you talk to a friend and they might say, hey, you're not stretching out your arm completely or something like that. But sometimes, even if someone told that to me, I would not trust them because my feelings told me I'm completely stretched out. I can't do anything more. And if that feels like something you've heard or you've said, start filming yourself. It becomes completely apparent what you're doing and what you're not doing. You can really analyze from an objective perspective, looking at your climbing and noticing, hey, I'm doing this wrong. When you start filming, you'll also start seeing patterns emerge. For example, one of the big patterns that came up in the first month of me filming myself was that my footwork was horrible. I had no mobility, and like I said before, my knees hurt every single time I would toe hook. I could never do a rock over. I could just not get my weight properly over my feet. I would also see that I would never do the same beta as everyone else. So I would have to break every single boulder to get to the top. And my way of thinking would always be like, it's okay, I can break it. The pattern I saw was that I was always pushing back, learning the skills in exchange for getting the quick top. The problem with that is that there's gonna come a time where suddenly you're gonna have to do a crazy move that you've never learned. And instead of doing, let's say, a V10 heel hook, you could have learned it at V2, V4, V5, whatever. But now my heel hooks, I was climbing V7 at B pump, but I couldn't heel hook. So it was a huge gap, and it's much harder to learn because there's so much more going on. It's much easier to take it slow and build your fundamentals up from the ground. Now, even looking back at everything I've been doing up until now, there was one more pattern I didn't really realize until recently. I've never really projected something for over 5 sessions. If you look at my Road to V10 series, the longest one I've done was a white EQ that I didn't get, and it was just full of crimps and I wasn't good at it. So because of that and the encouragement of my friend Ruslan, I started trying a V10 here at V-Pump. And to be honest, today was supposed to be a video about that, and I didn't get it, and they stripped it down, so I lost against my first Nidan. But the simple act of trying showed me that there was a lot more I could do than I thought. That opens the possibilities to try really hard stuff a lot more, because after all, you only try as hard as you try. Thanks to working on my total level, videoing myself, analyzing it, working out my patterns, I had improved a ton. The gap between my lower skills and my top skills was slowly getting smaller, but there was still a few boulders that would pop up all the time. And I would realize it was simply because I didn't understand the fundamentals. This was especially obvious on two moves. I would suck at heel hooks and rockovers. A great example of this was when I joined the competition last year and I couldn't get a zone on the easiest boulder because I couldn't rock over onto it. Now, if I was in your spot right now, I would ask myself these 5 questions. Do you know 3-point climbing, the best orientation and angle to grip every single type of hold? Do you know the 6 fundamental footwork positions? Do you know the pros and cons of these? And if you're not sure, do you know if you want to subscribe to the channel to learn them? Regret number 7. This might be the toughest one of them all. Setting the wrong goals. It's something I think we all kind of have to go through. Even I set myself the goal of sending a V10 at B Pump before my visa expires. I didn't get the send of the V10 and they already took it down. But I think it's important to understand if this was me of the past, I would be pretty depressed. But right now, after all of these previous regrets were kind of fixed and learned over the years, I really know what I'm lacking. And I know right now that pursuing that V10 again would be a mistake. I can see what my physical limitations are. I know that technique-wise, I wasn't that off, but my goal now in the short term, instead of just repeating it, is to try a lot of different things and train up different areas I know are weak. It's really important to remember that even though my goal for October might be a V10, my real life goal is going to be to become the best climber I can. We're always working towards that big goal instead of just the number. I would really notice in the past that if I would just focus on the number, I would feel I was plateauing all the time. You might get a new set and send, let's say, a V7 and be really happy one day, and then the next week you're like, oh wait, I can't send V7 anymore. Why? And yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You already got the one that you were good at, and now the other ones are the ones you're bad at. And then maybe going down to V5 to learn heel hooks doesn't feel as nice, but that's what you have to do. So yeah, setting the right goals is very important. And I think this is what mostly took out the fun for climbing for me in the past. I really think how I approached training in the past was not something really healthy, and it was always a misguided effort on thinking how I was gonna solve my climbing issue. So in the past, my split was probably like 50% training, 50% climbing. And I do think training is super important, but how I was training was really off. I would always write numbers and reps and everything, which is important, but sometimes just focusing on the number of the reps makes you lose quality very fast. You might be on the last set and you're just shrugging and jumping and kipping and doing whatever movement instead of doing proper technique. And that doesn't help anyone at the end of the day. Something I think is the key on how I kind of improved on this lately is taking away the ego. So now when I did finger training, for example, even though I'm really weak, I was really focusing on proper form for my half crib. And it was disgustingly low to the point where people thought I was somehow making it up. I've been seeing the results of doing it like that instead of just cheating the form for like a higher max and more views or whatever to say it's crazier. I used to always say I was inflexible, which I am, but I would always do passive flexibility, which over the years, I've learned that it's not really the way to go if you want to get that good mobility in climbing. And even though now I don't really do a consistent stretching routine, which I used to do 30 minutes every single day before, now I have much better range of mobility and it takes much less time. So working very specifically on the things you want to improve and seeing that those things are actually going to make your climbing better made a world of difference. But I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to habits, and some bad habits are really hard to fix. For example, for me, I did calisthenics, so I got really strong before I started climbing, and I could go through all of the first grades of climbing very fast just because of that upper body strength. But suddenly you had to do a drop knee or something, and I was destroyed. Something I really regret is being cheap. And I don't mean only money, even though That's 2. Before coming to Japan, I had one pair of really stiff shoes, and it was good for climbing outside, but for indoors, I could see that I was horrible. Getting a new pair of soft shoes changed my slab skills completely, and now even my heel hooks are much better because of the shoes. Since I work at B-Pump, I can climb for free at one of the best gyms in the world, but spending every single session in the same gym is not a good thing. If you do have the opportunity to go to different places and try different styles, I really recommend it, and it's something I'm gonna start doing starting today. And my last regret, might not be my last, but it's number 10. I think every single regret actually stems from this. If you can look long term, everything else doesn't really matter. I was always thinking of the goals I want to get by the end of the year or in the next 6 months. But if you could write down how to become the perfect climber in 10 years instead of in 1, I really think all these mistakes I've made over the years would be very obvious. A great climber would understand the fundamentals and work on those first. Then he or she would train and spend most of their time climbing because it's a skill-based sport. Whenever a weakness would appear, they would address it and keep on moving. And just repeat this progress infinitely, be happy about it, not be too bummed out whenever you get a small loss. Spend time with friends, experience different things, and realize that climbing is not just about the break. I hope this weird video rant of the things I regret over my almost 10 years experience of climbing has helped you somehow. And if you want to watch another video, then check this one out.